Hello again, folks. We're back for episode 3 of TMC, the Mainframe Community, with me, Niall Ashley, from the Mainframe Society MS Ambassador. We're joined today by an absolute legend in the field. This is Dr. Herb Daly. Herb, if people don't know about you, which we should, because you're a legend in this place, please could you give the audience a brief description about yourself?
Hi, Niall. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm an academic. I work at the University of Hertfordshire, and I've been working with the Mainframe community for, I think a little bit over a decade now. One of the things I've been involved in is kind of helping my students engage with the platform and engage with the community. And I have a kind of a small legacy of kind of different groups that I've kind of started. I also chair the mainframe skills and learning stream of a local mainframe organisation.
Mm-hmm. So, working in the kind of educational sector, working in academia, how does this kind of, how have you kind of interfused basically that with mainframe kind of education? How have you focused on kind of bridging the gap there?
Okay, so I have quite an unusual background. So when I first graduated, I went straight into industry, and I was lured back a bit later on into academia, and I always kind of liked the kind of the interesting boundary between the two and crossing it. That was one of the things that I kind of really got into. My first post as an academic full-time at the University of Bedfordshire, my role was what was called enterprise lecturer, which meant that I had a particular interest in commercial stuff and the interface with industry. And on the back of that, I was involved with the UK branch of GSE, and I helped a group of students where I was at the University of Bedfordshire start something called BEAMS, which was Bedfordshire Enterprise and Mainframe Society. See, it's all in the catchy acronyms. And so that was a way for us to engage with mainframes and mainframers. Yeah. That was the start of it. That my role was specifically around kind of industry stuff. But kind of since then, as I've moved to different organisations, I've kept that kind of theme up. And it's been very rewarding. So I helped start a group at Wolverhampton, and I've got another group who are working at the University of Hertfordshire. I'm very keen to support the IBM Z Ambassador program. So I've just always had this interest in kind of mixing the two, because I think the platform is very often underrepresented.
Yes.
in academia, and there are some great jobs. There are some great roles. It's a very interesting platform, and so it's nice to make that opportunity available to as many people as can do something with it.
I totally agree, and you're right in that sort of sometimes there's the underrepresentation. People think of kind of computational devices and instinctively look at the Apples and the Windows kind of devices. Maybe even you'd be rare to find some who kind of actually focus on Linux, but actually there's this whole other platform that the whole kind of world runs off really, and people don't necessarily know about it, or they don't necessarily kind of have the interest or maybe the opportunities there. So I think what you're doing is really important. So how have you found that kind of when you started education?
Yep.
Did you kind of forge these relationships with organisations like IBM, and the kind of the guide shares? Did you forge those relationships yourself, or how did that fall into place?
Yeah, I mean the quirky history was I was working with a group called UKCMG, and they had a relationship with GSE. So UKCMG. They are performance and capacity specialists, and one day I was chairing a stream for Mainframe because there was no one else free to do it, and I heard some Mainframe IBM guys talking about something called the Academic Initiative.
Oh, brilliant! And
that was a kind of a way to provide mainframe material to academic institutions. And I just joined the University of Bedfordshire, and I thought, well, this could be a great way to engage some of my best students, so they could potentially get jobs with some really great companies. So off the back of that, I started attending GSE as well. And as I kind of walked around there and learnt a bit about the community and kind of heard kind of the stories and the challenges that they had, I thought, okay, there are things that we can do with this, and so that relationship just developed.
So Herb, with outside of the kind of organisations, the guide shares and potentially other kind of effective groups like that, what other community groups are you a part of, or have you been a part of in the past?
Wow. So one of the most significant I can think of, back in 2011, there was an educators event down at IBM Hursley that lasted for a week, where everyone in academia who had some interest or role in mainframe got together, and we had a number of different talks from people in Ireland, from people in Europe, talking about the courses they ran and how they worked. So we were kind of sharing our knowledge and experience, and that was quite galvanizing. That made me think, this is an area with a lot of potential that could really be developed if we spent some time on it and introduced more students to it. So then I was also involved with the GSE, what was called the Educator Council. So we would meet at management summits and talk about how mainframe education worked in our countries. So that was how I met guys at places like Hogeschool Ghent and people from Switzerland, from Germany, and I made some very interesting contacts there and learnt a lot about kind of the differences in the system and how it was supported by government, or kind of how it works slightly differently. In 2015, I convinced our head of department at the University of Bedfordshire to join the Open Mainframe project.
Brilliant.
So I think we were the first university in Europe to kind of sign up there, and that was with the support of Mark Anzani, who was head of ecosystem at the time. And so we had kind of, I think, a couple of events kind of at that early phase. And I'm still thinking all the potential things. I have things like the BCS, so the British Computer Society, things like the IET that I've worked quite closely with, and often kind of getting opportunities for students involves kind of combining different offers from different places. One place will kind of help get people in, and then another will help get people on. And if you can kind of meet the needs of kind of both parties, then you can actually, kind of create something that's quite significant, that's quite punchy.
Yeah.
UKCMG, I was part of. GSE UK, I've had a lot to do with. I've taken part in ECC, which is the Enterprise Computing Council, which is a conference that runs at Marist College in the US, and met a lot of the figures from the UK academia, US mainframe academia, which is a great help, a great boost to what I was doing. Involved with things like IBM Tech Exchange. I was one of the first wave of the Z Champions program in 2018.
Still there?
Yes, indeed.
With the branding.
Kept that going. And started a number of communities at the universities that I've worked at. But so these are very much student communities, and it's all about kind of student empowerment, and it's kind of this thing of how do you give people the opportunity for them to shape their learning and their university experience, because I think it's often too easy to imagine that university is something that happens to you, creating these societies gives people the opportunity to shape what happens for themselves, and I think that's really important.
Yeah. So the event actually that you mentioned in 2011,
yeah,
have they done those since? Because I think that's a fantastic opportunity for sort of expanding that educational representation of mainframes.
No, I believe that was the first and last. I actually have a picture taken from there online somewhere. I'll send it to you if you like. But yeah, it was that little gathering of mainframe academics in the UK that kind of started a lot of us, kind of working together and gave us that perspective on what was happening.
Yeah, and as an IBM champion for quite a few years now, what's been your experience there? Because obviously you've attended, as your kind of badge will represent, you've attended the Tech Exchange Summit in Barcelona in the kind of EMEA area.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing the support you get from the program and how the program has grown over time. And in many ways, that's kind of given a bit of a fillip to the things that I was doing, because it extends your reach, and then kind of people will contact you, and opportunities will find you, and so yeah, that's been great for me, particularly kind of working with different kind of tech communities, and kind of getting involved in projects that I wouldn't have otherwise kind of been able to access. I mean, think one example, we were doing some events for Black History Month, which in the UK is in October.
Yes. And
I knew that IBM was doing a lot of work with Zed at historically black colleges in the US.
HBCUs, yeah.
That's right. And so I reached out to Libby, who's the head of the program, and I said, have you got anybody who could give some talks about this perspective? And she put me in touch with a number of people, and it kind of really added some interesting kind of aspects to the Black History Month events we're running at the university.
I think that's lovely, and I think it's really nice that this community is so supportive. You can speak to one person who put you in touch with someone else, and these things can really grow and flourish in quite natural ways. They're just about the benefit of the kind of wider community.
Yeah, no. It's. I mean, I often say it's a very friendly tech tribe.
Yes.
So, as an academic, there are several tech tribes that I work with, and this is one of the friendliest.
Yeah.
I often. I mean, one of the things I had in mind when I was first kind of creating the relationship was I knew a lot of people, and they were going into the games sector, for example, because they thought games were their passion. Who doesn't when they're kind of growing up?
Still do.
Well, but actually, when you're working in it, it's a lot like the music business.
Yeah.
It is quite it can be quite relentless. It can be quite kind of short term. There's not the incentive to invest in people. And when I looked at what was happening in the mainframe space, I thought, well, actually, those are some really good careers.
Yeah.
There were people who could, kind of do some really good technical work, and have a really interesting, really long career, if only they'd cross the street and get involved with this technology.
That's it.
So yeah, kind of making sure that was an option for people, I think, was something that I was quite keen to do.
That's very noble, and I think it's really nice that you've supported students and kind of aspiring mainframe technologists into these kind of into a lucrative career. Like, you really helped that set them down a really kind of a beneficial pathway for life. So that's really good.
Well, I mean, some of it is just offering it, just kind of putting it out there. I mean, for some people, that's it's amazing. For others, maybe it's not the thing. I mean, I don't know if this is one for the podcast. I could tell you all sorts of stories about the ones that haven't quite worked out, which I've kind of subsequently learned from and gone, okay, so that's how it works. It works slightly differently to how I thought, kind of.
Everyone's got different priorities, and I think that's totally reasonable, and that we have that in the mainframe industry. I don't really know much about databases or kicks, but I do know about security. I know people who swear by the green screen, and other people who prefer GUIs. So we're all different. In
a way, in mainframe, that's a slightly different thing. I kind of think of it as it's like you have different roles on a rugby pitch is the thing, but you're all in the same team, and you're all playing rugby, and you're all trying to get the ball across the line. I mean, what I mean when I say it kind of doesn't work for everyone. So I can remember, and this is one of those opportunities to thank someone. I had an offer when I first took an interest in mainframes from Verhoef Training to come down and take up a place on one of their mainframe ZOS courses that was undersubscribed, and they said, well, we'll do it at cost price, which is basically kind of the printing, which is absolutely ridiculous, right? Because this is several £1,000s worth of training, and they're offering it to the likes of me for like kind of 30 quid's worth of printing, and so. They said, look, bring a student along with you, and that was my thought, that I could kind of get someone in, and we could start a student society together. So I asked a friend of mine, who's the brightest guy that you've got? And he introduced me to this fella who was he was an amateur sysadmin. He was very, 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 very skilled in the Linux space. So we went down to Bath and we spent a couple of days, and we learned all about ZOS. And on the way back to Luton, I said, well, how did you find it? And he said, absolutely terrible. I said, why? What, didn't you like it? He said, well, no, because it was like someone had cut my legs off. All the things that I knew how to do, I was a complete beginner again, and so I just couldn't get a grip on it. And from there, I kind of thought, well, actually, if you have someone who's very invested in a particular technology, mainframe probably won't work for them.
It's a very valid point,
because it's almost like they're losing all the things that they kind of came to it with.
Sort of sunk cost fallacy, isn't it? Sort of.
Yeah. Or they've honed these abilities, and now we're making them think again and to think differently. And from there, I thought, well, actually, it's the people who have potential. It's the people who've maybe come to this a little bit later. It's people who are maybe committed to things like maths and physics and engineering, but who haven't completely committed to a particular platform in terms of computing. Those might be the people that kind of do the best out of it. So that was an interesting learning experience, finding the right people.
And it's sort of it can be about transferable skills, like you say, because you could be in maths, kind of physics, engineering, and have transferable skills, but you're not so locked into one operating system or one technology that you can't see what maybe the equivalence is. Like you could say what's the equivalence between RACF and ACF2, and you can try to find the things where they're similar, they're different, and maybe find the kind of, like I say, the nearest one-to-one relation. Whereas when you get people who try to do that with, say, ZOS and Windows, it's quite difficult because they're at a point they sort of diverge. There's similarities until a point, and then those differences could possibly be alienating for some. Yeah,
sure. I mean, one of our most successful presidents at the Mainframe Society in Wolverhampton, she actually had a background in physics. So it really does pay to look outside what might be the obvious routes onto the platform.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, I look at, our industry, and we've got incredible people from a range of different backgrounds, and a lot of them were never they never kind of grew up as techies. They took that decision at a certain point and committed to it, and it works for them. But, it's not like everyone has to have a degree in engineering has to have a degree in computer science.
No, and it helps to be kind of open-minded. Of course. I mean, there are kind of characteristics I tend to kind of think make a big difference. If people who are trying to do something, bigger than themselves, right? They appreciate being part of a team. They feel a need to do something that's kind of really important. They like technology. They like interesting puzzles, and those are often traits that kind of work very well when you join a mainframe team.
Yeah. So speaking of obviously all this to do with the mainframe, and then obviously all your background in education, with the kind of educational kind of community and the mainframe community, do you see there as being kind of differences, similarities, or do you actually think they're kind of almost one wider community, like a Venn diagram where there's actually quite a lot of overlap? Like they shouldn't be seen as mutually exclusive communities.
That's an interesting one. Both and neither. So, I mean, I'd say one thing they have in common is that they are both communities that are probably not so well understood. So, mainframers often in their own organisation are a kind of a small group of the IT team that nobody quite relates to, and it's only when they all get together that you kind of see how similar they are, kind of thing. Academia, similarly, you're often looking at the world in ways that even your subject doesn't quite get. So, you're always slightly to the side. You're almost a little bit like almost like a journalist at times, because you're looking at things and events, you're looking at your subject and you're kind of documenting it. At the same time, you're bringing lots of kind of historical knowledge to bear and kind of future knowledge, kind of research to bear. So it's a different kind of a vibe, a different kind of a mission, especially when you kind of factor in that you're bringing in a new generation of people and you're helping them know the most important things, and then you're kind of launching them forward to kind of go away and do that stuff.
So that's a really good point about not being well understood, actually, because you can have this sort of this issue where you might have the RACF kind of team and then the kind of Chief Information Security Office team, and they're not the same. They both sort of focus on security kind of in a principle, but they focus on it in different ways, and they don't necessarily understand what one another are doing. And like you say, sometimes there's this idea of like, well, we're the security people and we're the security people. You are both the security people, but you have to be able to find those commonalities and find that kind of way to work together, like the rugby team analogy you touched upon earlier. In a way, that is the issue that we kind of have as a mainframe sort of people. Sometimes we know what we're on about and other people know what they're on about, and we kind of struggle to find those kind of commonalities and those things where, I understand it now, maybe this anecdote makes it easier for me to understand kind of the kind of context behind what you're saying. But that's a very valid point. I actually really like that.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of why we have some mainframers are often diplomats. They're kind of the go-betweens between different worlds. And I mean there's a whole thing that we see now. I mean when I started working with mainframers, the world was quite separate in a lot of ways, and over time everything's converged.
Yes.
And so there are things in distributed world that every mainframer needs to know, and there are things in mainframe world that every distributed person should know, and those worlds have been coming closer together, and I think that's a really good thing. Particularly when we talk about the theme of mainframe modernisation, which is all the rage at the moment. I know there's people that disagree with the term, but I think we have a common understanding of what that is, and some of that's around new practices and technologies coming on the platform. So convergence has been quite important in enabling that.
Yes. And I think the term I quite like is it doesn't necessarily have to be modernisation, because we're talking about a platform that is modern. It is very up to date. It's very flashy with all this incredible new tech, all this incredible hardware, cryptographics, etc. The term that I really like from Emma Skirgaard was declunkification. And sometimes it's not that you need to modernise it; we just need to tidy it up, neaten it, kind of. And I liked that expression. That really resonated with me.
Well, for me, modernisation is more about the skills and how people work together, and then everything else flows from that.
That's really, I like that. Yeah. So actually, just jumping back, when we talk about education communities, we talk about mainframe communities, but this word community, what does that word mean to you? When you think of the word community, what do you think of?
I mean, people with mutual interests, mutual goals. There's some ideas about supporting each other. I'd say broadly broadly that. People with mutual interests.
Yeah. So obviously, you and I are part of Mainframe Society. We're part of other community groups together. We have that kind of common interest, like you say. Now, for other people in this space, so let's take students as an example. You touched upon some earlier. They might have these similar interests, but they might be struggling to get their foot in the door in terms of a career. Yeah. So, what kind of educational opportunity? So what sort of career opportunities kind of are there for those kind of coming out of education? And maybe as a community, what could we do to support those people more?
Well, I would say start before that, right? So
don't wait until you've graduated.
No. And this is the whole thing about kind of student society. I think of your degree program as maybe it's a period that you use to find out about where you want to go and to make the connections about where you want to go next. So I think the most useful thing that the Mainframe community can do to help the potential Mainframe community, which are kind of people who are studying, is to engage with them while they're still learning, while the paint's still wet. I think work placements and internships are very, very important. I think so things like Z-Explore, I think are really useful initiatives to give people an initial taste of the platform, and you can start conversations from there. I mean, arguably, a community is only as good as the conversations that it's having.
Yes.
So it's good to try and seed those in any way we can.
And you're right. We have resources, developmental resources like IBM Skills Depot, Z-Explore. There's also more opportunities than ever for a lot of students to attend kind of conferences, and that's not just in the UK. That's potentially internationally. I know there's a lot of work going in at Share for that. You've got other conferences, as I say, all across the world, and then. On top of that, we've obviously got platforms like Mainframe Society where people can kind of reach out and they can see where do they live relative to maybe one another, where's their nearest mainframer, and they can ask them questions. Like you say, we work experience placements. I mean, we've just both been at an event earlier this week at Bedford College, and we've just been supporting students there, and I think that was a really rewarding moment to see that some of the students are taking a real interest in this technology. One of them's now got a work experience placement booked, another one's got an internship. I mean, that's phenomenal. That's really kind of rewarding stuff to see. So
yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, we are living in a golden age of Mainframe community because when I first got involved, a lot of the groups that we have now, and kind of the this podcast and others, and the Discord channels and those kinds of things. I mean, it's never been as easy to engage with the community as it is right now. So I think that's very encouraging, and hopefully it's something that we can enable. I think one of the challenges that we have in this kind of completely connected world is there are so many things competing for our attention. Yeah. How do you know the ones that it's interesting or important to kind of get in touch with? And so that's often part of what I do, try and kind of introduce people to things that might kind of lead them somewhere. Yeah. And I think that's an important role for, if you're part of a community and you like what you do, you think this is good and it might kind of work well for other people, to represent that as you do, and just share what you know to give people the opportunity to connect with it, because a lot of it's about opportunity and creating the opportunity for people to find out what's going on.
And I think you're right. There is so much out there, and it is all competing. And obviously, kind of views is money. Sometimes, views kind of relate to ads, and ads is therefore a source of income. I know that Sean Rooney sometimes jokes, we could have Subway Surfers on the side. We could have Mainframe Education and Subway Surfers next to it. So, sort of the jingle, jingle, jingle.
Yeah.
Don't forget to pay attention. But there's so much to learn, and it's hard to learn it. And
I wouldn't say it competes. I would say it's complementary. complementary, because I think it's all for different audiences, and you can kind of dip in and dip out, and
there's more choice than ever. You look at, you've got your likes of skills build, you've got kind of opportunities with Open Mainframe project, their open education. There's so much out there, and then you've got the colleges that say that might be touching on it. And then you've got likes of RSM Tech do education, Verhoff. There's so many out there. I think it's just about seizing every opportunity that works for you.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes the role of kind of community members is to be the algorithm. So rather
to filter for the
or to introduce, kind of put things that people might enjoy in the top of their the top of their feed. Kind of thing.
And I do think that's right. I look at the likes of some of the most kind of prestigious people in this community, and I do look at like the things that they repost, and those things are kind of my top priority. It's not the kind of advertisements, it's not the companies, it's the people.
Yeah,
because like you say, they introduce me, they filter for me, but I guess with so much technology out there, is there anything in particular that you feel is maybe of all the technologies on the mainframe, or of all the kind of opportunities that's underrepresented? So for me, I feel one of the biggest issues is I really like cryptographics, and it's so important for security. But actually, not many people really understand how they work, and not many other people understand cryptographics outside of the mainframe. They might say, I know ICSF, I know all about master keys and certificates, and all that kind of malarkey. But actually, do you understand generally like ciphers? I look at Bedford College, and they were talking about their kind of the Cytel ciphers around the stick, and then they talked about Caesar cipher, and they kind of work incrementally. And I think that's sort of a missed opportunity. I think that's maybe somewhere where I felt personally like we could do a better job as a kind of as an industry, as a community, to really educate on that. But is there anything that you feel is maybe under-explained or underrepresented, or?
It all depends on your background.
It's true.
So if you did a cybersecurity degree, they spend a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
You could you could kill a horse with the amount of cryptographic stuff that they do. Yeah. And I think it's often that as people come in from different directions, they find where their gaps are, and kind of go from there, decide what they need to kind of mug up on. But things that we don't talk about. I mean, there's actually a whole general thing, and this is one of the things that I found with the community when I kind of first stepped into it. There are all kinds of fascinating things and features available. Yeah. The ones that a lot of mainframe shops use, things I kind of call the classic stack, which would be, kind of ZOS, DB2, kicks kind of thing, often don't make the most of all the stuff that's out there. And I think there's definitely a piece, and I know there are various groups, IBM in particular, that try to encourage people to try some of these new things that are available. There's a piece for looking at what we've got and thinking about how we could change that, improve that by bringing in some new ideas and some new technologies. Yeah.
And people can be risk averse, like you say. It can be, well, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I'm used to these kind of core technologies, and why should I risk installing Z-Secure? And then what did I get enough value out of it? Would I use these features? They're very, very valuable features sometimes, but maybe people, especially you look at this industry on a production system. It's not like a bank wants to risk any downtime, so totally understand why they're risk averse. But obviously, you say potentially missed opportunities there.
Yeah, and it's back to this mainframe modernization thing. It's kind of giving people the opportunity to try things out, to make the most of things, to kind of do things differently, to improve things. It's definitely a theme I think we should embrace. It's funny, just reminded me of a lot of what I've done has been around kind of creating communities and creating networks and introducing people and making things kind of happen. And one of my early trips, I think it was in Nice by the sea, I ran into Henry Kuiper.
Oh, brilliant!
And he was giving a talk on how he embedded WhatsApp messaging in his JCL code, so he could see when his jobs were failing on his phone. And I thought, wow, that's just the kind of combination of skills that I'd like my students to kind of help hear about. So he was one of my kind of early collaborators in helping build the society at Bedfordshire. But yeah, that notion, and again, it's back to that idea of convergence, that there are lots of technologies out there, and picking the right tool for the job. I'm not talking about these kind of people who say, never COBOL kind of thing, but finding ways to bring good technologies to bear on the type of problems that we have on the mainframe. And from an academic point of view, there are lots of issues that the mainframe saw first or sees first, right? Just because of what it is. It works on a fantastic scale that distributed due to cloud is only now experiencing, and they're going, oh, this is a problem, right? Okay, so we have to
solve that 10 years ago.
To go to, yeah. we did that one. Similarly, there are all sorts of things that are a done deal on distributed that mainframe hasn't really got a hold of because they haven't needed to. They've been away in this lovely kind of glass box, and they've just never had those conversations. That a lot of extremely intelligent people have no idea what Unix system services brings to the party as kind of the now the soft underbelly of their mainframe. So there's some really interesting conversations to have about that, about how different teams and different technologies can work together, and how you can embrace different tools to get kind of outcomes that are really, really useful and significant.
Yeah. So this is fantastic, and I think for our audience today, they're kind of going to look at all the stuff that you talked about, and they're going to realise why you're such a reputable name in this industry.
Don't know about that.
Well, I beg to differ, but it's not just me who begs to differ, because you actually won an award at Tech Exchange EMEA for all your contributions as a champion over the years, and for all your valued contributions that we have no doubt you'll provide going forwards. So I actually wanted to ask you about that quickly. I appreciate we're sort of getting to the end of this episode, but basically in that regard, how has the IBM champion and how has the kind of general IBM community helped you, and maybe what would you love to see going forwards?
Yeah. So it was quite a humbling moment getting voted Champion's Choice in Barcelona and wearing the blue jacket. I really appreciated the recognition. I think that's one of the best things about the community, that we do notice what other people do, and how much energy they put into kind of making the platform kind of stand out. I think anyone who runs their own mainframe shop knows how much love has to go into making them work, and
blood, sweat, and tears.
It's really nice when it shows. In terms of the community generally, I like what I'm seeing now. I think there is the potential for more global conversations. So now we're very much online, and there are some great crossovers that we can do. I did I'm trying to remember what they call it. What IBM used to call it? It wasn't Tech University. I can't remember which one it was. Okay, well, there was an IBM event. And this was kind of during COVID times that I did in Japan, together with the Japanese Master of the Mainframe winner. And we talked a bit about the platform and about Master of the Mainframe. It was interesting to learn about the different role of mainframes in Japan, and the different challenges that you have as a mainframe. was going to say enthusiast or
Professional.
yeah, professional. Yeah, the different challenges that you have in different countries. I mean, this to me has been one of the most interesting things, that the role of the platform in different places can be very different. I mean, if you look at the US versus the UK versus Germany versus France, it's a very, very interestingly different character that it has. There are historical reasons why, and those are interesting to kind of delve into. But it feels like now there are some great opportunities for global collaborations, and hopefully the best ideas about different practices and different ways of working together will all kind of come together. The other day I was on a call with some academics who work on the Emma Scholarship in the US. It was run by Cameron Say, who's a great friend. I think I met him
Jeffrey
in
Decker as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, and you see, now I'm going to remember everybody's name, all the people on the call. No, okay. Maggie Hall. Who else was there? Well, my point was, I was on a call with some academics working on the Emma Scholarship in the US, and we were talking about the potential to kind of work together so we can get some of the best things that they do there and potentially kind of bring them over here to the UK and kind of share some of the lessons that we've learnt, kind of thing. So I'm keen that I was going to say there's almost a hashtag in that, mainframe without borders. But yeah, kind of that people have conversations so that we can learn the different things about how our different national communities work together.
Yeah, and I love that. And conversations like ours now and conversations like that are so important, and I think we're really lucky to have them. And I think that's what kind of the Mainframe community, not just this podcast, but generally the Mainframe community is all about. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this podcast, and I mean, I'm going to be thinking about this for days and weeks to come. But honestly, it's been a pleasure, Herb. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much.
And thank you everyone for watching. This has been the third episode of TMC. We can't wait to see you at the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.